drama scenes with drama queens and heroes, acting out there on the silver screen. Come grab a seat, the popcorn is on me.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Sir Thomas Manning, not to be confused with Sir Thomas. No, I'm Sir Thomas of Aquilius, or I know I said it wrong, but I did it on purpose. Or Sir Paul McCartney, or Sir Anthony Hopkins. All of those have sirs in front of them as well. And Thomas, you have been knighted, especially after we got a chance to check out a little movie called Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on the show. We're also going to talk about these really cool shoes, and we're going to talk about technology and sometimes how big business can impact technology. Hopefully we'll get to all that, and if we don't, then who cares? But stick around anyway. I hope you will find something enjoyable as you join us. Thomas, good to see you, man. Thanks for being here. And Mr. Tillman, I think he's on medical leave, and so we wish him the best, and we wish him a speedy recovery. From what we understand, he will be coming back at some point and be the Bionic Man, the $6 Million Man. So we're hoping that'll happen. Well, Thomas, let's talk about this film that has been getting a lot of good buzz. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon back together again, Viola Davis, Chris Tucker back on screen, and Jason Bateman, an incredible cast in this film called Air, directed by Ben Affleck as well. And it shows this story that has these North Carolina connections, including a connection to Boiling Springs, North Carolina. So let's hear your thoughts on Air.
Yeah, well, I'll say this movie's a great reminder of just the sheer amount of basketball talent that comes from the state of North Carolina. Whether it's Michael Jordan, who is basically the subject of the film itself. He's from Wilmington, North Carolina, born and raised. Then also we get a few name drops that local listeners and local watchers especially will recognize. The Charlotte Observer is mentioned. James Worthy from Gastonia, North Carolina is referenced, as well as Artis Gilmore from Gardner-Webb University alum. Artis Gilmore is name dropped. So, a lot of local connections. But looking to the film itself, as you mentioned, this is directed by Ben Affleck, and he stars as well as Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike. And this is Affleck's first film he's directed since 2016 when he did Live by Night. And prior to that, he directed Argo, the Best Picture winner, in 2012. And it takes a very special skill set to tell a story that's adjacent to sports, but not directly about sports, but still find a way to inject all of that excitement and entertainment and suspense and catharsis, that athletic competition brings, but, take all of that and transport it into the stories surrounding the sports. But I think Affleck is the perfect filmmaker for a narrative like that, and he nails it with Air.
Yeah, it's a film that I'm intrigued to see, and I'm glad that you got a chance to check it out, because I think when you put Affleck and you put Damon together, there is a certain magic there. They've known each other for so long, they've worked together for so long behind the camera, and have collaborated in front of the camera as well. And there's something, there is really something that's magical, I think, that happens sometimes when they're together. Do you feel the magic came through with this?
Most definitely, and watching this with a responsive crowd was a really great experience. I watched it, it was a press screening, but they also had some local audience members who had won radio contests, that kind of thing. So, and they were very reactive to the humor and the comedic timing in the film. And just the comedic timing is very tight, and I think that's because the core cast has such great chemistry. There you have Damon, Affleck, Bateman, and Chris Tucker. The best way I can describe it is almost comedic racquetball. They're they're playing off each other just, the snap of a finger. And there are even a few lines where, a quip is fired off so rapidly that it doesn't even hit you until a few seconds later just how funny it was.
Wow.
And so just that's another thing, how watching it with a crowd, seeing there's almost like a ripple effect where someone over here will start laughing, and then it'll like click in your brain just a few seconds later, and then you'll really start getting into the humor of it. So this was probably one of the best. I'm someone who in recent years has definitely had my gripes with modern audience members and the way people react to movies in theaters. But for this one, this was probably one of the better ones I've had in quite some time.
But you mentioned that witty banter, that dialogue back and forth. And anytime I hear it described the way that you described it, I think about the master of that, Aaron Sorkin. And do you feel it has that Sorkin-esque feel to it?
Most definitely. A movie that came to mind when I was watching this was a film that Sorkin wrote, I guess almost a decade ago, Moneyball, starring Brad Pitt, directed by Bennett Miller. And that was another movie that was connected to the sports world, but most of it wasn't actually about the baseball games themselves. It was about all of the behind-the-scenes maneuverings, all the behind-the-scenes politics, and this follows in line with that. And in order to tell that story, it is going to be very talky, and there's a ton of dialogue in the script, a lot more dialogue in this compared to something that we saw recently like Dungeons and Dragons, which a ton of action, ton of spectacle. This is mostly just people talking, but it does take a specific kind of storyteller to do that. And I think Affleck did great work with it. He's very good at capturing a specific moment in time that was historically significant and examining it in a very hyper-focused manner and clearly communicating how the dominoes set up during that brief time period were culturally influential for years to come. And that's what the inception of the Jordan brand was. And even almost 40 years later, we're still seeing just how relevant the Jordan brand continues to be.
Yeah, and not only the Jordan brand itself, but the impact of what one person, one player on the court or on the field, it doesn't matter, can do to impact and influence merchandise. And now you have people who are called influencers. And I don't know that would have happened had Jordan's brand not taken off, and had you not had people behind him who believed in the product and believed in the person. And the movie is called Air. And one more question I want to make sure I throw out before we give your final comments. Chris Tucker, we don't see him a lot, but when you and I talked before we went on the air, you were talking about Tucker, how he just continues to shine in things like this.
Yeah, so Rush Hour 3 he did in 2007, but since then he's only had maybe 3 film credits. And but seeing him in this, I wish he was in more because he never fails. I mean, I completely understand that he pretty much did everything he wanted to do, and now he only does projects that he's attracted to, and I respect that and appreciate that. But he never puts in bad work. He's always pulling from something in himself, and I think he was the comedic backbone of the film, and I think if you didn't have him playing that role the way he did, then it wouldn't have been quite as tight as it was all the way around him. So yeah, Chris Tucker definitely a standout, and of course I also want to mention Viola Davis as the emotional support behind the whole film, playing the mother of Michael Jordan. And really, Michael Jordan, we actually don't see his face in this film. We kind of see a stand-in for him that's shot from behind or shot from the side. But the real story in the Jordan family in this particular film are Michael Jordan's parents, and Viola Davis as his mother is just phenomenal. I can't say enough about what she's able to communicate just with her eyes and just with very simple expressions that just the way she can like control her facial muscles is incredible. And there's just one simple thing that she can do, maybe with like the curve of her lip or something, the curve of her mouth, and you can just feel the entire range of emotions that she's going through.
She is amazing talent, and always has been ever since I've known her, and it's great to see her continue to shine, even in the supporting roles. She is quite amazing. So, what is your rating for Air? Which is when does this hit theaters? Is it already in theaters?
April 5th. So yeah, it's already in theaters, and audiences can check it out. Have a great time. I'll give it a solid B+ for Ben Affleck's Air.
Solid B+ for Air. You can find that in theaters. Now, there's a theme, Thomas, for our show, and it relates to business people behind the businesses that have success. There's a fictional account of this gaming software company where this young guy, barely 20 years old, who has developed these app games that have really taken the world by storm. And you're looking at his company and you're seeing the success of what's happening. And it's got this very Google-esque, Apple kind of feel to it. But there's a tragic accident that leaves the owner dead. And then a consultant comes along to take over. The series I'm talking about is called The Consultant. It stars Christoph Waltz, also Brittany O'Grady, and Nat Wolff. You may be familiar with Nat Wolff's brother, right, Thomas?
Yeah, that's right. Nat Wolff is the brother of Alex Wolff, who is a friend of the show. I think we can give him that title. And,
absolutely. The series is called The Consultant. You can find it on Amazon Prime. It is an Amazon Prime original. It was dropped actually in February, and they dropped all the episodes at once, 8 episodes for the first season. It has a very Twilight Zone-esque feel because no one understands who this consultant is. No one is able to find any background on the consultant, played by Christoph Waltz. But there's something just unique and different and creepy about him. Christoph Waltz, I think, we talk about Viola Davis shining. Christoph Waltz can shine in anything. And to me, what's interesting, Thomas, is he can play the same character, or the same type of character, not the same character, but the same type of character in everything he does, but somehow you're just drawn to him. And in this particular series, there's nothing truly new about his acting. I mean, it's what we saw, if you remember the QB series, The Most Dangerous Game, and also, Thomas, you were mentioning another film he did with, he was a Bond villain. He's very similar in all of these, but yet there's just something that is, there's this magnetism about him that I'm drawn to, and I have been for quite a while, and that is definitely the case in this. He is the anchor in this series, and he holds you to it, and you may not know exactly what's going on. There's these twists, these turns. You've got one game coder who was trying to investigate the past of this character known as the Consultant, who has a name, Regis Patoff is the name he's given, but there's no backstory unless you dig deep. And Craig, played by Nat Wolff, is that coder who tries to investigate along with Brittany O'Grady, and Brittany O'Grady stars as Elaine, who was an administrative assistant, but she gave her name Creative Liaison, which I like that name. Ultimately, this is a story about ethics. It's about big business. It's about what would you do to climb up that ladder of success, and would you be willing to throw your ethics aside if you thought it gave you a chance at prosperity? That's ultimately what this is. It's an ethics tale, and I'm really hoping we're going to see more of this series. It's well worth watching if you're drawn to Twilight Zone-esque elements of films or TV. You will find this worth the watch. Also, if you're looking at something that's a little different, a little unique, there's that. And also, if you like Christoph Waltz, those are 3 reasons worth watching or worth taking in The Consultant. I'm giving this a solid B rating and hoping we get a chance to see more. Questions, thoughts, comments?
So it's streaming on Amazon Prime, and there's 8 episodes for the first season. Is that correct?
You are correct, sir. Yes!
That is correct. And I haven't done my research here, Thomas, so I don't know if it's been picked up for a second season yet. But even so, even if not, the first season's worth watching just for that story and just those kind of creepy twists and turns that you think you might have answers, and then the next thing you know, they'll throw this curve, and you're like, wow, okay, I did not quite see that coming that way.
Kind of like this show.
Yeah, exactly. But The Consultant, it is an Amazon Prime original, and I recommend you checking that out. Well, Thomas, we're going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back. When we do, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd love to talk about BlackBerry if we get a chance, and we'll also do a mention of something new relating to Avatar, a home release, right after this quick intermission.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a...
Hi, I'm Tim Foster from C19 TV Sports. Join us each month for Yeti Tracks right here on C19 TV. Each month we talk to the players and the coaches of Yeti Athletics, including cross country, Yeti's boys baseball, and Yeti's girls softball. We break down the matchups, the conferences, the games, and the events that make Yeti sports so special. Stay informed with Yeti Athletics right here on Yeti Tracks each month. Join us right here on C19 TV and online at C19.tv.
Hi, I'm Nikki Bliss Carroll, your host for Cleveland Connections, the show that explores what's happening at Cleveland Community College. Join us as we sit down with members of faculty and staff to discuss programs of study, upcoming events, and other exciting campus news. We'll have a new show for you each month on C19 TV, or you can stream us online at C19.tv. Tune in and connect with Cleveland Community College on Cleveland Connections.
There are so many positive things that are happening in Cleveland County. It's too hard to keep up with, and that's what Community Spotlight is all about. Hi, I'm Tyra Silvers, and I'd love for you to join me every other week right here on C19 TV, where we learn about the good folks and organizations that make our county such a special place. So drop in on us at Community Spotlight, only on C19 TV and online at C19.tv.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a...
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning, the second here, hanging out with Sir Thomas Manning. And the reason I'm saying Sir Thomas Manning is because we're diving into the age of knights and dragons and minstrels and people playing crazy instruments and just breaking out in song.
And sometimes breaking out in a song so much that it distorts their entire reality. So
that's right. And the movie we're going to talk about really isn't a musical in the sense of true musicals, true form musicals, but it is a film that I think surprised a lot of people. Dungeons and Dragons is what we're talking about. And Chris Pine, I've been a huge fan of Chris Pine for years, and I think really anything he does, he can do well. But as we talked about Christoph Waltz before the break, how Christoph Waltz a lot of times plays the same character. Pine is very versatile in who he can play, but when he gets a chance to have fun and throw his comic timing out there, it works, and it works really well. So let's get your thoughts on this movie that, honestly, you and I really didn't care one way or the other about seeing, but it was Pine that drew us to it.
yeah, I kept hearing so many great things about it. One of my favorite movie critics, David Sims for The Atlantic, he actually had it at his #1 spot of 2023 so far. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I gotta give Dungeons and Dragons a look. And we saw $5 Monday night matinee, and so like it can't hurt. You know, worst thing happens, we just see a forgettable movie. But I will say, You know, I will say I'll probably see better movies this month alone, but it's still it's just a rip-roaring good time. You know, I honestly can't imagine anybody walking away from this and hating it. And ultimately, that's all this movie needed to accomplish. And this also reminded me that I really want a Game Night sequel. The John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein co-directed this film, and they also co-directed Game Night a few years ago with Jason Bateman, and I think they've really found a great rhythm here. This is a pure action comedy, and I think that's the sweet spot for their filmmaking style. So if you look back to Game Night, there's a scene in that film that's an extended one take, and they're playing keep away with this priceless Fabergé egg, and that takes us through multiple levels of this large house, and it's upstairs and downstairs, over balconies and through different rooms. So that's an extremely well-directed sequence, and you don't usually see action this carefully constructed in comedies. But watching Dungeons and Dragons, I can definitely tell it's the same creative team behind it, just in the way that the action is thoughtfully choreographed, and there's actual people technically who understand what they're doing, which in a lot of comedies they usually stumble. The action is sacrificed in lieu of the comedy, or vice versa. But here, it's just that perfect balance. Absolutely,
and you got a chance to interview Bill Skarsgård. We had him on the show, and you got a chance to ask him a question that he had never really thought about before. He was talking about that rhythm that you have within dialogue, and also how you have to have a certain rhythm with choreographed fight scenes and action sequences. And I think that speaks here to this film, because there's a lot of action sequences, a lot of stunts, but there's a lot of that comic timing and interaction between the characters. And it really is, this is a teen action fantasy comedy, because they're all after kind of a goal. And while there's one character, of course, that has more to gain than the others, they all have ultimately something to get out of that treasure that they're seeking. And the treasure, while it may be physical, there's also a treasure that's very personal and a heartfelt treasure too. And I'm not going to give away a whole lot, because I want people to check out the movie. But I think that rhythm shows strongly with what Daly has been able to pull together here. And if you saw Game Night and watched this, you say, "Yep, I see exactly what you're talking about." And it really does work. I found myself just sitting and smiling most of the way through this film. It wasn't a, it's not going to be one of those films that's I'm going to be thinking about during award season. It's probably not going to be one of those films that I'm going to think about when people ask me for my favorite action fantasies of all times. But that said, it was still just a joy, and just an escape, and just a wonderful time to engage in cinema.
Yeah, and you mentioned the kind of internal treasure that's the thematic through line of the movie. And ultimately, it's a movie about family. And we keep seeing that being a common thread in more and more blockbusters, whether, of course, talking about the Fast and Furious franchise, or Avatar: The Way of Water, which this family is our fortress, as Jake Sully said in that film, or even in a movie we talked about a few weeks ago that you weren't a huge fan of, but you still appreciated some of the emotion behind it, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. We know how much family was important in that.
Right.
And this once again, it's the ragtag nature of this team reminded me a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's just everybody brings a certain skill set, but they're all haven't reached their full potential yet. And it's about them coming together and figuring out a way to individually combine their strengths and put that to the greatest strength.
Yeah, and I love how it speaks to the family you are born with, but also the family that you create along your journey of life. And that's a beautiful sentiment that we've also seen happen time and time and time again. But when it works, it works. And I think ultimately, whether you love a movie or not, if you can look thematically about what it says, what's the message, and what it's trying to speak to, if it makes you appreciate that, if nothing else, it's worth it. And for me, while I appreciated what Shazam! Fury of the Gods was trying to do with that theme and that idea, it didn't execute it fully. I did appreciate the theme and the idea. For this movie, I not only appreciated the theme and the idea, I appreciated how it was packaged, and that package was just something that you and I walked away going, this was fun. This was just a truly enjoyable time. It was a popcorn flick, and sometimes from a critical standpoint, that's all you need. And what's the director's intent? The director's intent's not to have this shine during award season, maybe some special effects awards, maybe some stunt awards, but that's not the director's intent. The director's intent was to allow you to have a good time and to do it inside of a theater.
Most definitely. And going back to the cast, I want to mention a few more. Justice Smith was in this, who we recognize from Detective Pikachu a few years ago. Also, Sophia Lillis from the It films. Hugh Grant is basically playing the same energy that he had in Paddington 2. This kind of exaggerated, just villain role where he's having such a great time. And Michelle Rodriguez, she is absolutely jacked in this movie. It's her workout routine. I don't know what she did, but her arms are massive. And one of the early action scenes in this movie, it has her beating up like a half dozen bad guys in full suits of armor, and she just has a single brick and holding her own against all of them. So shout out Michelle Rodriguez. She's turning in more and more into an action star. I mean, she's always been around action films, but I think this was one time where we really got to see her shine. Like, as far as the action is concerned, she was probably the character that I took away the most from in this film.
Absolutely. Well, Thomas, we covered a lot in this show. Well, we covered 3 films in this show this week, and there's some other things we wanted to talk about, but we're going to come back and talk about those later, including I'm giving you a sneak peek at the future. There's a film called Blackberry that had its North American premiere at South by Southwest. It'll be released in limited theaters in May 12th, so we're going to talk about that in the future. Stars Jay Baruchel. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about Avatar. Hopefully, the next time we get together, we'll be able to talk about that and the home release version. You got like 10 seconds. Anything you want to say about it as far as the release date? You want to share the release date for the digital and for the Blu-ray, and then we'll come back and talk more about it next time we get together.
You can purchase Avatar: The Way of Water on digital now. There's actually not a Blu-ray physical release date as of yet, but when it does hit, I'm definitely going to make that purchase. So
awesome. Well, movie quote of the week. This movie quote of the week comes from the Cult Movie Book. This was given to me as a birthday gift by my favorite daughter, Catherine Manning. Appreciate that. This comes from Mad Max. We talked about Mad Max Fury Road briefly recently because I like that a whole lot better than Fury of the Gods. So the movie quote, I'm a rocker, I'm a roller, I'm an out-of-controller. So there's your movie quote of the week. I'm Noel T. Manning II for Thomas Manning, Sir Thomas Manning, right here on Meet Me at the Movies. And we didn't give a rating, did we, for Dungeons and Dragons?
I don't think we did, but it's the ultimate B movie. He said it's a B.
I'm right there with you. A solid B for Dungeons and Dragons. I know we would be hearing from Greg Tillman in his sickbed going, you didn't give it a rating. Man, you didn't rate it. What the heck is wrong with you? So a B rating for Dungeons and Dragons. We do appreciate you spending time with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies, however you choose to do it. And until next time, that is a wrap.
Gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.